we've got a big crowd. I really appreciate everybody joining. Several dozen folks. This is welcome to the ACPJ annual meeting. I think if you didn't gather all right earlier, we had some excitement earlier, but we seem to have managed it a little bit, and hopefully we'll correct that. But probably, as most of you know, ACPJ is it's an association of individuals and organizations who seek to promote peaceful and just relationships through education, dialogue, and action. As a coalition, we're committed to promoting a culture of peace and building a country where domestic policies are sound and just, and where the world at large is treated with respect and dignity. And we focus on 3 areas: peace and nonviolence, social justice, and ecology. Today, our keynote speaker will be David Swanson, who's been able to rejoin us on his phone, and we look forward to hearing from him. He is the Executive Director of World Beyond War and Nobel Peace Prize winner, nominee and recipient of the 2018 U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation Peace Prize. So we're excited to have him here. You can see a glance at our program. I'm going to pull that down right now and stop sharing that. But in addition to David, we'll have Kwami and Clarice Abdul-Bey as our Peace Activists of the Year. We'll also feature some of our coalition partners a little bit later, and including a special recognition to Indivisible, Little Rock and Central Arkansas as our Peace Partners of the Year. But this is a business meeting, and I don't usually like business meetings on Sunday afternoons, and I've had to attend some, and it usually was an unpleasant situation. And it started out that way, maybe, but I think the rest of it's going to be great. And we will move forward. But our bylaws call for us to hold an annual meeting, usually in January or February, to encourage support among our members and involvement and input into the programs and activities of the coalition. We'll also nominate and elect new board members a little bit. So that's kind of the business part. So we'll start off that way, and we will start with the first few things. Bill Marks will give a treasurer's report, and we'll follow that up with John Coffin nominating officers, or presenting our officers and nominating board members. And then I will jump into a year in review to follow up with that. So those will be the first things, and we'll get back together and go on to some of the things I mentioned earlier after that. A couple of things. Please mute yourself if you're not muted already. I've asked several folks here to be co-hosts to help facilitate any issues with people not being muted or acting inappropriately. If you have, I think I've turned it back on. We'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, you can ask a question in the chat after the call. We will, after the call, we will go through the questions for David after David's speech, and Donna will present some of those questions to David. If you have another question for the coalition or other general information that's maybe not to David, we'll probably go through those after the call and post some information to our Facebook page on that. So those are a couple of things. I've put, if you overlook some of the inappropriate stuff on the chat, I've put links to several organizations and ACPJs there at the top of the chat. You can find our Facebook page, our website, where to donate. You'll find information about World Beyond War there. You'll find information about Indivisible and Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement and all sorts of stuff there if you're interested. Get that, and we'll post that. I think I'll post that here in a second, so it's a little bit further down on the chat and you don't have to scroll up so far. So that's where we are now, and I'm going to switch to Bill to do the treasury report and kind of appeal to membership. And if we can go from Bill, go to you, Jim, to go back to the officers and members. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bob. I'm Bill Marks. Our opening balance as of January 1st, 2020 was $5,940.45. Expenses last year were $7,804.74. Our income was $10,384.75. And our ending balance as of 12/31/20 was $8,520.46. Now, last year's donations were very generous, and we anticipate that our members will be just as generous this year in spite of COVID-19. That has kind of complicated our activities somewhat. That's the reason we're having a Zoom meeting today. I can't stress enough that we are a donation-driven nonprofit organization. So we live on the donations that come in from our members. So whatever you give will be deeply appreciated so that we can continue our programs working toward peace and justice in our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. This is John Coffin, and I'm going to give you the names of our board members and also our new officers. Let me begin with the ACPJ board. I'm going to read to you the 2021 ACPJ board as proposed by the 2020 ACPJ board. Please listen carefully to these names. Who knows, they may include you or may sometime include your own name. So members proposed for the 2021 ACPJ board are the following: Kwami Abdul-Bey, Caleb Baumgardner, Dr. Martha Beck, Ellen Brown, Elder Matthew Bryant, myself, John Coffin, Hamid Ibrahimafar, Bob Estes, Jane Estes, Bill Marks, Miriam Paré, Maylie Rollins, Dr. George Simon, Maya Uedat, and Dr. Donald Walter. Those are the recommended board members that we're presenting this afternoon.
Hey, John, typically I think our bylaws allow for a nomination from the floor. Are there any nominations for the floor, or if not, is there a motion to cease nominations and accept these as submitted?
We haven't heard from the floor, and so I'm willing to put your motion into effect, Bob, that we approve all board recommendations as presented.
I would
All in
second
favor?
that.
Aye. Aye.
Do we have consensus pretty much? Thank you, Peggy. I like both thumbs up. All right. Thank you all, and congratulations to our new board members. This is great work we do together, and we count on each and every one of you, as Bob said earlier, for commitment and lasting dedication. Now, the board gets together and chooses its own officers. And for the coming year, 2021, these are the officers that the board has brought forward for us to work with. First, the chairperson, Dr. Donald Walter. Vice Chair, Ellen Brown. Secretary, Elder Matthew Bryant. He's currently serving that position, so he's got wonderful experience. And our treasurer, whom you've also heard from, Bill Marks. So it's Walter, Brown, Bryant, Marks. Those are our officers for the year. And I would say let's raise our hands. We can't applaud right now, but to say thank you to them. That concludes the mention of all the officers and board members. Bob.
All right, thank you. Next on the program, it's a review. I'm the outgoing chair, and the review of what we did last year and what what's looking ahead on us. 2020 was an awful year in many ways, but there was some good that came out of it. We produced a lot of good programs and activities, and we were surprisingly productive. And in many ways, we were able to do things that wouldn't have really been possible outside of COVID-19 and the pandemic and lockdown. And it's interesting what you can achieve during a challenge, and in many ways you can grow. And I think ACPJ and a lot of different things grew last year, and we're pleased by that. We kicked off the year with a no war in Iran rally. That was what was going on in our minds right now as we thought there's a threat with starting war with Iran. We collaborated with a lot of different groups in town, and I'm going to mention some now, and I'm not going to repeat them every time, but Indivisible, who we'll hear from later, they were integral in that. Arkansas WAND, Pax Christi, Arkansas Peace Week, Community of Christ, Poor People's Campaigns, and others helped pull that together. It was a great program. We had a couple of different rallies, and we did that. A year ago, we had our regular annual meeting, kind of like we're doing now, but we were in person down at the Unitarian Church. Again, a lot of those same groups and other groups were involved with a great in-person meeting. And that was kind of the end of the in-person meetings for the most part, at least the ones indoors that year. But we needed to move on to some kind of different things as the lockdown occurred. We did a couple of things new that last year. I think that were pretty good. We put up a billboard. We'll see a picture of that a little bit later. We never had done that sort of advertising before. And it was an interesting process to go through. I'm not sure if it's the most economical or cost-effective advertising out there, but it was fun to go out there. We had a design that was comparing the cost of military spending, a B-21, and how many COVID tests could be done for that amount of money that it would take to put together a B-21 bombing. Kind of a fun project. As the summer rolled in, it rolled into the protests and the Black Lives Matter and the social issues that were coming from that. There were all sorts of groups involved with that during the year, and we weren't a leader in that, which I think is sort of appropriate, but we were a supporter of that. Indivisible was one of the main groups that organized the Take a Knee rally the first weekend of June. All sorts of folks. I see folks on the call now that were part of that rally. I see Don Wood's picture. He's not moving, and others that took part in that rally. That was really a really thoughtful event that was put on, and ACPJ we're glad to have our name associated with that as well. That went on throughout the summer with all sorts of activity going on associated with that. All throughout the year, we had Speak Up Arkansas, the radio show on KBF. Wednesdays, the fourth Wednesday of the month, 5 p.m. John and Hamid are the kind of the driving force on that, and any number of folks. It usually involved talking with two other organizations or two other initiatives and hearing and learning more about that. A great, virtue for our organization to learn more and to reach out, and we'll continue that in for the next year. In August, we had Hiroshima, the 75th anniversary of Hiroshima. And typically we would gather with Pax Christi, Arkansas WAND, ACPJ, and maybe some other groups and have a vigil or remembrance program around Hiroshima. Didn't do it in person this year. We talked a little bit about it, but agreed that we would do it online. That was probably our first big Zoom production. And I think going that way, we reached a larger audience than we normally would have. And we had a very content program with a lot of content that was very substantial. And Jane Estes, who's, you can see her picture, and Juan had a lot to do with that and putting that program together. And we're very pleased by that. Of course, we rolled in the next month into Arkansas Peace Week, which had some of the same programs that we did. Some of them were online. We had a great virtual summit, which last year was in person. We did do the in-person Peace Fest with children, and that turned out okay with the way we did it. We had a interfaith meal outside at a picnic in a park, not inside, which worked out really well. And I think maybe the most, the thing about Peace Week is some of the seeds we planted in the past started to really blossom. We started the 7th Street Mural Project 6 years ago with Peace Week and painted our first mural there. That really took life in 2019. And then in 2020, it just exploded. And it was filled with, and we'll see some of the pictures of those in a moment. It was filled with, probably 500 yards of murals printed up there, or maybe not that many, but several hundred yards of murals printed. A lot of them associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. And, we dreamed a couple of years ago, what it would take to paint murals up in there. So that will take decades to do that. But people kind of ran with the idea that we started and filled that up. And it was a wonderful event. And of course, we kind of ended the year with the election. And I think most of us are pleased with the election. Indivisible, that we'll hear from a little bit later, was integral in the voter turnout and education in Arkansas. And I think most of us were pleased with the result of the election, or at least having a new administration in place. But we've realized with the events that happened since then that there's still a lot of work to be done, even with the new administration. I went back, and Hamid, you may help me with this. I was looking back at some old ACPJ events, and I remember a no war with Iran rally in 2016. Do you remember that? Yeah, so that was right there in the middle of the Obama administration when we did that. And we were tried to hold the Obama administration's feet to the fire as well. We had events against the immigrant detention policies. We had events against escalation of U.S. involvement in the Syrian civil war and other things. I can't remember them all. And we need to keep that same attitude with the Biden administration coming in, because there'll be something to be against. There already is, but I'm not going to go into probably. But we need to do that, and we need to be diligent on that. Can't tell you what all the future lays ahead or what we'll be working on as 2021 goes on, but I am confident that ACPJ is in sound footing to address those things as they come up. We touched on the mission earlier. That's a broad mission that is flexible enough to jump in and address things as they become evident. We've got a great board and officers. For the first time in my memory, we have our full slate of 15 board members per our bylaws. And our officers are great too. They're able to step up. And we've got great partners to work with that kind of set in this community, that set the tone and direction on several issues that we will support. So I'm really confident we're going to have a great future here, particularly 2021. Although I can't tell you what our strategy is right now. It's going to have to develop. So really look forward to that. And kind of a summary of our past year. Got a video, well, it's slides, and it's going to be accompanied by music performed by one of our new board members, Maya Uwadet, and the song is called Look in the Mirror. And I'm going to put that on right now, and we'll look through that. And then where will we go after that? We will go to Matt, who will begin the recognitions of our partners and our first award winner, Indivisible. So let me share my screen and we'll look at that. I don't think let me start that over. You guys didn't hear anything, did you? All right, let me go back and see if I can do it better this time. Okay, let me fix that. I'm sorry. Let me plan B here. I know it's wrong. All right. I'm confident that I'll get it right this time. Yeah. Let me stop sharing for a second. I think I messed it up. I did something wrong. Let's go ahead and go back to your part, Matt, and then I'll I'll fix whatever I did wrong on that. I apologize.
So the amazing thing about ACPJ is that this group is truly a coalition, a diverse group of organizations of people that work together for common goals. Now, this is the part of the meeting where we recognize some of our partner organizations. It goes without saying that without each of you, we would not be able to accomplish anything. We need each of your ideas, time, and resources to make things happen. So as I name a few of these partner organizations, I want you to look at the issues that they're working on and just see how many diverse issues we're working on together if you consider the collected efforts of all of these partner organizations. So I want to start with Women's Action for New Direction. Now, those who attended last weekend's annual meeting saw how dynamic this group is. Started out as a group of women that work toward nuclear disarmament, but now they're working on many peace and justice issues. And like ACPJ, even working toward doing things to help improve our environment and ecology. Pax Christi Little Rock is a chapter of a national Catholic peace and social justice movement, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a more active group that is putting the peace of Jesus Christ into action through their work and community involvement. Nonviolence, nuclear disarmament, human rights issues. I first met many of them during the protests organized by another ACPJ partner group, the Arkansas Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty, which sought to stop 8 executions which were ordered by our governor in April of 2017. And I, for one, was very proud to stand in opposition with those peace activists from both of these groups. Decarcerate, a group that's trying to replace the current unjust system of incarceration and punishment with one that affirms human dignity through criminal justice and prison reform legislation. Poor People's Campaign, a group that is continuing the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King through their fight against systemic racism, poverty, militarism, and ecological devastation. El Zocalo Immigrant Resource Center, a grassroots organization, is working hard to improve the life of immigrants here in Central Arkansas, helping to connect these valuable and productive people with communities and resources for the betterment of all. Moms Demand Action, a group founded by a mother after the Sandy Hook massacre, now has chapters in every state of the nation, moms, dads, kids, all working to protect people from a continuing epidemic of gun violence through education and legislation of sensible gun control measures. Heifer Project International, a group that seeks to end world hunger and poverty by helping communities help themselves through its famous program of the gifts of farm animals and other health and education programs. Braver Angels, a group that's trying very hard to bridge the horrible political divide in this country by getting Republicans and Democrats to talk to each other and listen to each other. Religious Society of Friends, better known as the Quakers, a faith community that has long been associated with nonviolence and peace, and sponsor of FCNL groups around the country that seek to meet with and influence our members of Congress to support peace-related legislation, a group that we hope to reactivate here in Little Rock again this year. And my own faith community, Community of Christ, as a third-generation minister and pastor, where I developed my interest and passion for peace and justice issues through our mission of promoting Jesus Christ and promoting communities of joy, hope, love, and peace. And many, many other faith groups that work with us during Arkansas Peace Week, trying to make peace the natural state and promoting activities designed to build peace in our communities. World Beyond War, Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. You're going to hear more about these partners later on in the program. And finally, we have Indivisible, a nationwide movement of local groups formed after the 2016 election to mobilize people to elect progressive candidates, restore and protect our democratic institutions, and defeat the horrific agenda by both state and national leadership of the past few years. The local chapter, Indivisible, Little Rock, and Central Arkansas, has been extremely active in numerous areas. Voter education and new voter registration. They're helping to expand the electorate by registering thousands and getting them to show up and vote. Mailing flyers, knocking on doors, sending emails, letters, and texts, and flooding the internet with social media posts to get their message across. Educating the public on candidates and their issues, holding forums, posting and providing voter guides and social media posts. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, spending countless hours helping educate the public about how to vote safely by absentee ballot. And participating in organizing numerous public events. Bob mentioned one of those earlier, to generate publicity on critical public issues, to show our leaders where the public stands on critical issues related to our democracy and human rights, and even to confront our elected officials in their offices to hold them accountable for actions that are important to us as the public. I can certainly say that they have played a key role in recent elections that have made things better. And for these efforts, the board of the ACPJ chose to honor this organization as Peace Partner of the Year. Now, originally, one of their leaders, Lori Evans, was going to be here to accept this award and speak for a few minutes. But as we speak this moment, she and many of her fellow Indivisible members are busy with an event at the Arkansas State Capitol, trying to stop a horrible, horrible Stand Your Ground bill and two racist education bills that are coming up for consideration later on this week in our legislature. But fortunately, other members of the Indivisible leadership team, Kat Beatty and Kristen Stewart, are here to accept this award and say a few words. So on behalf of the board, I want to say congratulations to Arkansas, Indivisible, Little Rock, and Central Arkansas. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Can you hear me? I just want to make sure my audio is working. Okay. We are obviously so honored to be named your Peace Partner of the Year. Such a prestigious organization as yourself. We, as Matt described some of our activities, but basically our activities surround registering, educating, and mobilizing voters. On the activism side, we hold our elected officials accountable and to our values, which are equity, inclusion, compassion, and justice. So we obviously have a lot in common with ACPJ. I am the VR, the voter registration coordinator for the organization. Obviously, registration of voters and expanding the voter our pool is a key part of achieving our organizational goals. Like many organizations, we had quite a bit of problems this past year. The COVID pandemic did hamper our voter registration efforts, but we did get creative, and we were successful in using digital strategies to continue to register a lot of voters. This year, we're looking forward to being able to do a lot more registrations. And I think our goal is primarily to use the collective resources of our community partners to maximize our voter registration impact. And I'm not really familiar with whether or not your organization is involved at all in voter registration, but as a group or as individuals, if that is something that you're interested in helping with us, there is much work to be done, and we want to get it done this year. I would like to introduce another of the Indivisible members who is here, and that's Kristen Stewart. And she coordinated our very successful VIP voter project. And she'll take a couple minutes and tell you about that. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Stewart, and I worked on the VIP voter project this year. And just like you were talking about, COVID super threw us for a loop. But we were able to still have over 17,000 voter touches in Central Arkansas, primarily in House District 32 and 38. And we did that through handwritten letters, also including the absentee ballot applications, handwritten postcards, and then we did a lot of no-knock canvassing in those two districts. And we were able to help District 32 flip. It was the only district that was flipped away from a Republican in the Arkansas State Legislature last cycle. And District 38, the candidate lost by 16 votes. So I feel like our project did make an impact. We got to reach a lot of voters. And we hope that we can take lessons learned from what we did this last cycle and put it to good use in 2022. But right now, something that we are focusing on is the state legislative session. And one thing that we really want to do is to be able to grow our impact statewide, because we think it's important for the constituents to reach out directly to their representatives or senators. And so I'm actually going to drop a link in the chat. If you're not signed up for our alerts, you can do that. Also, if you want to share this, this will just help us to give targeted information to people across the state on how they can impact their state legislators. Maybe they're on the education committee or the House Judiciary Committee, and so we can give specific updates for your representatives. But we're so thankful for all that you guys do and the relationship that we've built, and we look forward to working with you even more. If you have any questions about what we do, just let us know, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. But thank you all so much.
All right, thank you. I think it's back to me now. I'm not muted. Let me show you something. All right. If I can figure it out again. this you'll be receiving in the mail, this beautiful certificate. So,
Thank you so much.
it's printed, it's framed, it's not signed, but it will be getting to you at some point. So no,
Thank you very much.
you guys have been a great partner, and I think in particularly, you have led on things that have been very interesting and that ACPJ is interested in, but you have shown a level of leadership that I think is superb, that allowed us to help support you, but do it in a way that better than we could do. So we thank you again on that, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Our next award I'll present. I'm not sharing anymore, I don't think, am I? This is the Peace Activist of the Year Award, which ACPJ has been presenting going back longer than I've been around, but I think over 10 or 15 years or something like that. But back in 2018, I got an email from someone that I did not know, and they wanted to discuss a new initiative on social justice. And you're like me, you probably get emails and information about different proposals and different ideas that, most of them don't pan out because maybe they weren't a very sound idea to begin with, or the organizer didn't really have the commitment or resources to follow it through. But I wasn't invited to a meeting for the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. I was not able to attend. But Eric Wiebhouse-Braun, who I believe was the vice chair of ACPJ at the time, he attended the meeting. He reported back saying that that he thought that the proposal and the idea for Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement was very sound, and its co-conveners, Clarice and Kwami Abdul-Bey, were people of substance and had the commitment to organize and attract resources required to make it success. And he advised us to help him with this effort however we could and endorse it. Eric, there's not many people that I respect the judgment of more than Eric. I don't know if he's on the call today or not. He's on a sabbatical right now, but he's a quick read, and he can evaluate stuff like this pretty quickly. And Lord, was he right, I think. What Clarice and Kwami have done in a short period of time, this was just barely 2 years ago, right? I think when this kind of started, it is impressive. And it's too much to mention everything that they've done. But I'll just go over a couple of pieces of it. As co-conveners of the APJMM, they are working to memorialize Arkansas victims of racial lynching, terror lynchings all over the state. I think the number was 400 and something that happened that have been recorded, and more than that probably haven't been recorded. Last year, in 2002, near the end of the year, Roseanne Cash brought this organization to national recognition by awarding APJMM the proceeds of her song, Crawl into the Promised Land. Last year, the couple also launched the inaugural observance of the National Day of Racial Healing. I think last year there's 2 nights, and it really at the Ron Robinson, it was a spectacular event. Again, occurred here recently in the last week or so. As a virtual event, still, great event. They've also started last year the Shelter in Place virtual film series, where they've brought I don't know, dozens, I mean, 4 dozen, many different films that are available to view online with conversation afterwards. And they were noted as a winner of the Ford Motor Company's National Ford Freedom Heroes of COVID-19 Prize. These are national recognition, and there's more. I know I don't have them all, but these efforts, you know, they continue to broaden the reach and have significant impact on social justice in our community. And I must also add that the way they go about it with, you know, a positive attitude and an attitude of optimism based in reality, it's impressive. I think I said something similar about Sherry last year when she won the prize. That you know, both of these groups, and I guess most of our winners, have gone through the fight for peace and justice with positivity, and they're certainly out there. What's even more impressive, that they've done this with Kwami attending law school, holding down 2 jobs, I believe, which it's hard to fathom the amount that he produces in this limited amount of time. Kwami, you know, about a month ago, I saw an appeal from Kwami that he had this vision that he would like to, not that he hates his jobs, but be able to use his time that he spends on his jobs in this effort full time. And he had an appeal for patrons to help fund these efforts that would allow him to do that. Kwami, is that still something you're looking to do?
Yes, I definitely would like to do this work full time instead of having to clock in 80 hours a week, making $12 an hour.
Yeah. Well, ACPJ got together behind your back, and we would like to be one of those annual sponsors in this effort. I think it was $500 or something like that. So we'll send you that way. I know there's more to come. And if there's other people on the call that are interested in this, I think that they could probably contact you about that. But I think that would be a great use, you know, of our resources, and hopefully help you on that, you know, journey as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, but ACPJ is particularly pleased to present the 2001 Peace Activist Award to Clarice and Kwami Abdul-Bey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'd love to hear you say a few words.
One second. I wanted to make sure that we thanked a few people. Thank you so much, Bob. And we're very honored to receive the Peace Activist of the Year Award. We would like to thank the Arkansas Coalition for Peace and Justice, ACPJ current president Bob Estes, all of the board members, John Coffin, Hamid Ibrahimafar, I think I pronounced it correctly, Hamid. Also, like I said, all of the board members, partners. We also thank all of the partners, of our partners, Just Communities of Arkansas, our day one partners who has been in this fight with us, the Equal Justice Initiative, the Arkansas Historical Association, and ACPJ, of course, you guys have been there day one, and the Little Rock Central High National Historic Site. Our recent partners we would like to thank are descendants of the Elaine Race Massacre of 1919. I thought I saw Lisa Hicks Gilbert on the Zoom, and I wanted to thank you especially. Arkansas, the Arkansas NAACP, the Arkansas Urban League, the Arkansas Municipal League, UCA Center for Economic Development, the Yarn, the Clinton School of Public Service, Dr. Robert Richard, who is a part of that effort with his students. Thank you so much. And also Indivisible of Little Rock and Central Arkansas. Last but not least, last but never least, we want to thank our creators, our ancestors. Thank you to our family, our friends, our communities, and all of the legislators and everyone who has been a part of trying to help us push legislation for truth, healing, and transformation.
Much needed.
So we're just really excited about that. Senator Elliott, who has been there also at day one, legislator, and Tippy McCullough being there, Denise Ennett. So I just got to rattle these names off because they have been there from day one to try to help push us in that direction.
And let's also thank Sean and Peggy. They're both on here.
Yeah, Peggy Egan.
They've really been
and Sean,
supporting
yes.
us too, so.
I mean, just pulling out people who have just kind of been in our faces, been in our space, who have shown us love and support, and really wanting to see what can be done to help. ACPJ has been that coalition building support that has really been there for us, and we from the beginning. So we really appreciate you. I just wanted to share a little bit about Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. Some of our mission. It's a project. It is a project of our nonprofit, Washitaw Foothills Youth Media Arts and Literacy Collective, and that aims to challenge established thinking through hands-on and multimedia-based experiential learning. And the primary goal of APJMM is to memorialize the victims of historical racialized violence in the state of Arkansas, documented through geographical and genealogical research, soil collection, historical marker placement, and descendant acknowledgement with conciliation. We have been very fortunate to be able to work with Dr. Brian Mitchell and Dr. Guy Lancaster and Griff Stockley and a whole host of did I not mention the Arkansas Historical Association?
Yes.
All of them.
The historians around the state.
Yes, have been very helpful, and we started out reaching out to them so that we can have a more accurate and a more
story, Kenneth.
Yes, story, all of them. Everyone a part of that association has been very helpful, and we wanted to make sure that we were operating in a historical fashion with documented information and accuracy. And accuracy. And they have been a tremendous help for us. The primary goal, the secondary goal of APJMM is to promote community-wide engagement in this process through educational curricula, which we are being challenged right now with racist bills, as was once previous said.
HB 1218 and HB 1231.
1231 that will definitely, if passed, stop us from going into the schools, working with students with tools for teaching difficult history. And for us, it's very important to be able to do that, especially Arkansas history, so that we can learn from the past, heal, and move on in our future. And if we don't learn from the past, of course, we're doomed to repeat that past in our future. And we're seeing some of that now. Let's see. We also do artist expression, performance-based healing. We work with students to try to express themselves through their art forms, whether that is dance, poetry, oral history, all of those visual arts, photography, whatever that is, to help. And they've been very supportive with our organization with working with young people is very important to us because we bring them in
And
with every
George West has really
yes,
helped us
with
that.
everything that they are gifted with, and they just put their magic on it. And so we're very fortunate to be working, to have the opportunity to work with students to and at the same time they're learning and they are absorbing these things so that they can be the ones to push this activism forward. Yes, Lauren. The next thing is interracial dialogue, and that would be the Coming to the Table. Coming to the Table is a national office, has a national office, but we are the Central Arkansas chapter of Coming to the Table. And we basically, it's founded on coming together, Black communities, white communities, all communities of color, coming together, sitting down, talking about the issues that sometimes,
like I said, those
you know,
difficult
right,
conversations
stop
that you
us or keep us from understanding and and being open to one another, just having those difficult dialogues. And so that's part of what we do. And a long-term truth, also long-term truth and conciliation and racial justice activities. And we have coming up, we have a 28-day racial equity challenge that's happening from the National Day of Racial Healing. I'll let Kwami talk a little bit about that. We'll put some information in the chat on those things. And also with the Equal Justice Initiative being a partner, they do a essay contest that we're about to kick off
high school students
with high school students about social justice and racial issues that they will win a cash prize for that essay contest. And so I'll just slide it over to Kwami to talk about all the things. I also wanted to thank Eric, because without Eric, Bob would not even know us. ACPJ wouldn't know who we are, and we really appreciate Eric being a connector and just being such a great person in helping us.
And even with him being on sabbatical, he checks in with us on a monthly basis just to see what we're doing and everything and how he can help. So.
Yes. And before I slide it, I just wanted to thank Kwami. He is my partner. Thank you, Habib. He is my partner in life and justice. So I want to recognize him and all the hard work that he does on a daily basis to just kind of help bring everything together. He's the legal mind when it comes to things, and I'm the empathy and action mind when it comes to.
So I lack empathy.
No, you don't. You have empathy. We just do that together. So thank you all very much.
Yeah,
Kwami?
I don't know what I can add to what you said. The only thing that I just want to say is, like Clarice said, from February 1st to February 28th, we will be launching the first ever Arkansas 28-day Racial Equity and Social Justice Challenge. This is in association with the University of Central Arkansas and the Clinton School of Public Service. So there is we do have a Facebook page for the challenge. So definitely search for that Arkansas 28-day Racial Equity, Social Healing, Social Justice Challenge. It also will be on our APJMM Facebook page and on UCA's Center for Economic Development. Center for Economic Development. So you could definitely check that out. And we will be having weekly storytelling workshops with the Yarn and the Clinton School on the 4th.
On the 4th.
On the 4th, the students
4th.
from the Clinton School will be hosting this Thursday. Will be hosting a community-wide discussion on what happened on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol, virtual. So definitely check that out. And just early, the wee hours of this morning, I finished writing 2 pieces of legislation that we're going to get try to get pushed through the legislature. And one of the bills is called the Arkansas Historical Act, and the Arkansas Historical Injustices Act will do a couple of things. One, it will totally exonerate the 122 Black men who were wrongfully convicted in the 1919 Elaine Race Massacre, as well as the 21 young boys who were killed in the Wrightsville boys' school fire. Those 2 things will happen immediately once the bill is wins approval of both houses. Also, the bill will create the Arkansas Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission, which will begin a state-level, community-wide discussions on race and social justice, and it will be run through each of the 75 county judges, including the Pulaski County Judge, Barry Hyde's office. And the other bill that was written that has sponsors as well is the Arkansas Pretrial Justice and Equity Act, which will basically prohibit the arrest and cash bails for non-violent, victimless misdemeanor crimes. So those are the 2 pieces of legislation that were written over the weekend that we already have sponsors for, that you'll be hearing about on Channel 4, Channel 7, and Channel 11. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you all.
All right, I see a lot of people clapping, but I don't hear any of them. That's probably a good sign. No, what you're doing is tremendous, and we're glad to be a part of that. And we've got some information. We'll put it on our Facebook page, and you can see it in the chat, some links that are out there to support that. Like to go to you, Donald, and we'll go to, and you can introduce David Swanson, and then we'll let him speak, and if you can facilitate some questions that might end up in the chat from what he has to say, and then we'll go back after that. We'll go back and replay the song that we played a portion of before, which was tragic, but there's worse things that's happened today. But we'll get another chance for that, and then we may have another song, and we can kind of wrap up after that. So we appreciate everything. I'll turn it over to you, Donald. And then when David gets started, I'm going to prevent people from unmuting themselves again during his speech. So
it is my honor to introduce David Swanson, who's our keynote speaker. He is an activist and journalist, radio host, and author. He is co-founder and executive director of World Beyond War and campaign coordinator for rootsaction.org. David's books, which are many, include War is a Lie. It's an excellent book that I've enjoyed very much. He blogs at davidswanson.org, and I read his blogs regularly, and warisacrime.org. He hosts Talk Nation Radio. He is a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and was awarded the 2018 Peace Prize by the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation. It has also been my pleasure to work with David on the World Beyond War board and spend time with him at international conferences over the past 4 or 5 years. He's pretty good at delegating tasks where he needs to, but he also rolls up his sleeves and helps carry boxes and puts up posters and whatever else needs doing. It's also important to know that while he knows the international scene as well as anyone I know, he is also a longtime resident of Charlottesville, Virginia, which is smaller than Little Rock. So he has been active in local politics, the divestment from destructive industries, for example. So he's a perfect keynote speaker for us, and I'll turn it over to you, David, and I will share the screen and put your slides up. If people will also type questions into the chat, I will try to keep track of those and give them to you when you're done. So take it away, David.
Thank you, Donald. I hope y'all can hear me okay. I'm doing this on my phone, which I've never done before. So if I screw something up, let me know. I can't see the chat and I can't see you all, and I can't share screen. But I think Donald's going to share screen, and I'm going to say next slide, and all will be good. Missing from my bio there, if you go back even farther into my past, I worked for an organization called the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, or ACORN, which little known fact started out as the Arkansas Coalition of the Arkansas Community Organizations for Reform Now. I have enjoyed your meeting thus far and am aware. Yeah, you can go to the first slide, Donald. I'm aware that you all have a long history and know a lot, if not everything, that I'm going to tell you. So I hope there will be some new bits in here. The Iran issue that you mentioned already working on is one that we have had incredible successes on over the years as peace activists, holding off that war. And these successes are never celebrated. So I think that's, something we have to work on, is marking our successes. I'm going to talk a lot about forming coalitions, something you all have already clearly got down. I might talk a little about being very wary of political partisanship, but I think you've already mentioned that. And you've already mentioned using billboards, which is one of the other things I'm going to talk about. Can't read my own writing here. Anyway, I talk to a lot of groups around the world about this sort of thing, and so I would love to hear from you when I'm done about what you think I should change, what actually works for you and what doesn't. What recommendations do you have for the rest of the world? And I very much enjoyed your presentation to your award winners, in particular, that related to memorializing the victims of lynching. And I would just recommend a recent book by a woman named Kathleen Bellew on the pattern of uptick in racist violence in the United States during and following every major war, in particular the war in Vietnam, but also the recent wars, and also I think we would note in Arkansas World War I and the incredible uptick in racist violence just after World War I, which is of course in part because of people being trained in racist violence and taking part in wars and then coming back home, but in part everyone who didn't go and participate in the wars also being trained in racism and hatred and glorification of violence. So at World Beyond War, looking at this slide, we have a resource called the Peace Almanac, which you can get as a book or look at on a website or play the audio clip from every day, and we offer it free to radio stations. And so on this slide that I think just vanished, Donald.
No,
He's resharing it to full screen. Okay.
There's a note about today, January 31st, which of course was a day when back in 2003, when Tony Blair hung out with George W. Bush in the White House, and they discussed crazy schemes for trying to get a war going in Iraq, and then went out and held a press conference where they proclaimed their endless efforts to try to avoid a war. War would be a last resort, etc. To my knowledge, not a single member of the press corps, pronunciation intended, has ever, asked for an apology for that. Next slide. By the way, tell me when my time is up and we need to move on to questions and answers if we get there.
A motion to let you talk as long as you want. If someone don't want to hear you, they can move on to something else. I think we're in good shape.
Okay, so you let me know when you want to reverse that. Lots of actions can be done for peace locally at the state level, as well as globally and nationally. And I recommend trying to make things both educational and organizing, that is building your membership and your core of activists and allies, as well as activists, that is directly pushing for change in the world, and to make things as much as possible, both local and national or global. This is a picture on the right of this slide of some of our members in Canada this past Monday, stopping the shipment of tanks meant for Saudi Arabia for the war on Yemen, which made a great deal of news, not just locally there in Canada, but internationally, because it was part of an international day of actions to try to put an end to the war on Yemen. So when you do something that's global and local, the local media loves it, and potentially so does the global. Of course, make your own media with everything you do, and maximize the use of other media, independent and corporate. Do nothing, including, of course, meetings like this, as you're already on board with, without recording and promoting and making use of videos. Do nothing that doesn't take seriously the crises we face. There's, every action we do is an opportunity to educate people about the urgency of the crises, which of course include the twin crises, the one people sometimes talk about, the environmental collapse, and the one that almost nobody does, the greater than ever risk of nuclear apocalypse, which are of course interlocked in many ways. And do nothing that isn't fun and engaging. Next slide. The U.S. national media imposes this guy on us, Tom Cotton, as well as disastrous officials from numerous other states, and it would be good for the nation to hear regularly that there are groups and people in Arkansas that oppose disastrous opinions that make the news, and that these people have a sense of humor. So these are just, again, you all know better than I do, but these are examples of ideas from my chair in Virginia. Demilitarizing DC is the right move, despite Senator Cotton saying it, is a possible press release headline, and several others here. Next slide. Donald, of course, asked me, as everyone does, whoever wants to talk about peace activist organizing, how can we get young people involved? Obviously, one way to get not just young, but lots of people involved is to work on areas that are both anti-war and pro-environment, pro-peace and anti-destruction of the climate, etc. And so make use of all the resources on the environment page of World Beyond War. Work to stop the burning of these forever chemicals at these couple of sites named here in Arkansas. Work with a friend of mine and Donald's and some of yours, Pat Elder, who has that website, militarypoisons.org. Join efforts not far from Arkansas, down in Louisiana, to stop the incredibly destructive and poisonous open burning of ammunition, which is of course done near poor and principally minority communities. Work to expose and halt whatever environmental destruction and weapons production the Pine Bluff arsenal is still up to. I am under the impression, I hope is correct, that they've long since gotten rid of the chemical weapons that were there. Work to expose and halt the criminal misconduct of various military contractors in Arkansas, and I've put a link to a database there. By the way, I think Donald and some of you have got a link to this PowerPoint and to the PDF of this PowerPoint if you want to reference it later. And when you work with local environmental groups on local environmental/peace campaigns, get them involved in global ones as well, such as efforts to get military pollution included in Kyoto and Paris and other climate agreements. It's remarkable that one of the big contributors to climate, as well as various other forms of environmental destruction, is given a waiver and left out of the legal restrictions. Why not get that changed? And use those efforts to educate people about the incredibly major role that militarism, preparations, testing, and actual wars play in environmental destruction, and get World Beyond War to help out with petitions, flyers, speakers, webinars, whatever we can help with. And Donald, of course, has been a great help to World Beyond War on our board. Next slide. The biggest enemy of the United States military is, of course, not China or Russia or Iran or North Korea or ISIS. It is free college. And it is important to recognize that the U.S. military has a harder and harder time recruiting people to participate in its disastrous and often quite unpopular foreign wars. But it benefits whenever the economy's in trouble, whenever people have limited choices for their career prospects. And of course, the top reason listed by people who join the US military for having done so is the lack of other alternatives. Many countries, rich and poor around the world, treat college as public education and don't charge people for it and don't put them into massive debt for decades for it. This is perfectly doable in the United States and ought to be done. The financial trade-offs are almost unfathomable, as you know, having done billboards making some of the comparisons. But if you talk to people who don't pay much attention to the military budget about what you could do with 2, 3, 4, 5% of it to transform their lives and the world, it's shocking to a lot of people. Try forming not just campaigns that try to recruit young people, but campaigns led by young people. Form a youth-led peace and justice network to work with your existing organizations and let them decide what activities to engage in. Dealing with something that you would think would be non-controversial, that works in numerous other countries with less money to do it, still runs into the problems of US politics, the divisiveness, and why in the hell should students not go into massive debt for college when I went into debt for college and I paid my student debt? Why shouldn't everyone else go into debt, and so forth? So it's always useful on this and dozens of other issues to educate people about the incredible advantages of universal programs where you don't need the massive bureaucracy to sort the worthy from the unworthy, and you don't create the divisions and the bitterness by simply giving basic rights to everyone equally. And again, get World Beyond War to help with anything you want. And as always, use every campaign to sign up new people. Next slide. Conversion is where we have to get to, moving from war industries to peace industries. This is, something we can talk about in new ways during disease pandemics, but something we've had to talk about for decades, and we'll have to keep talking about until we get it or perish. Celebrate pandemic heroes for their services. Start creating the possibility in our culture of thanking people for their service who've actually performed a service. Make this a part of our culture. Pass local resolutions, you probably have in the past, but keep doing it, urging Congress to move money. But beyond that, get local governments to create public hearings to discuss what could be done locally with the amount of money paid through taxes locally into the US military. Create study, get economists to do studies just in economic terms. What would be all the benefits of converting to peace industries locally? Get allies who are involved with this locally to join nationally in pushing for things like a demilitarized Green New Deal, like the better prospects for a $1.9 trillion spending package if some of it is taken from the incredibly destructive, unfathomable pile of money that's going into the military. Next slide. This is a campaign that we've done in a lot of places with success in various places. And Donald mentioned, I think, that we succeeded with this with the city council and the public budget here in Charlottesville, Virginia. Start a campaign to divest your city, your county, your state, your university, your institution, take money out of weapons. There's no reason that a teacher who has spent his or her life educating children to be better members of society should have their retirement be dependent on there being a lot more wars. It's sick. It ought to be shameful. It ought not to be a morally neutral question. Use the resources on the divest page of World Beyond War. Get us to help. And start talking about investing public dollars locally in good and sustainable enterprises. Next slide. This is another topic that we've taken up in various cities and states and counties and provinces and regions. And again, we succeeded with some of our demands on this past year here in Charlottesville. And it was very interesting. Last week, there was an announcement in the morning one day that the White House would be issuing an executive order on no more military weapons being provided to domestic police forces, as well as, executive orders on that same day on, federal contracts for private prisons, for-profit prisons, and various other topics. And they all, subsequently appeared that afternoon on the White House website, except this one, which vanished, hasn't been seen since, which is a little disturbing. Somebody changed the president's mind, and I don't think it was the police. I think it was the military. That's speculation, but we have to keep pushing this locally and regionally until we get it effectively nationally. And we need our cities not just to not take free and cheap weapons from the US military and training from the US military, but to not take weapons of war or buy weapons of war from anybody, or to have military training from anybody, from any company from any country, etc. This is, of course, a good opportunity to build alliances with civil rights organizations. This is something we're working on right now in Portland, Oregon, and a number of other places, and it can educate and organize at the same time. Next slide. Education. I won't read you all these details, but a lot of what World Beyond War does is education as part of our activist campaigns, and through initiatives that are principally educational. We do online courses and books and webinars and so forth, and building activist components to those. There are a ton of resources on the website. Ideas here for things to do locally, that some of which you may already do, peace essay contests, peace art contests, etc., and billboards. Our organizing director, Greta Zaro, recently created a PDF set of recommendations how to get the most out of your billboards that I imagine you already have seen and made use of. And I did a PowerPoint presentation like this yesterday on how to use billboards. Next slide. Then there are global campaigns that you can be a part of locally, that can educate people locally and add your local input globally. Get on World Beyond War's email list, and if you want to be on a discussion listserv where you contribute, it's not just a one-way street. Get on the listserv, join in these campaigns and give them a local twist. Co-host webinars with breakout groups with people from distant parts of the world, perhaps designated enemies of your country's government, and get to know people. It is, a wonderful opportunity to be taken advantage of in the fact that everything has been forced online. Create campaigns to establish local sister cities and present your new ideas to global organizations like World Beyond War, and see what they can do to spread them around and get distant support for what you're doing. Next slide. So I think a top priority right now for something we can accomplish, as well as for something we can use to feed the success fetish. There's so many people who need successes if they're going to do activism, is to finally end the damn war on Yemen. I mean, we've just been through a presidency where, for the first time, you had the Congress use the 1973 War Powers Resolution and end a war, but it was vetoed by President Trump. We now have a president who promised not to veto it, a Congress that promised to do it again, a Secretary of State who's promised to support it, a Democratic Party platform of 2020 with it in it, and yet nothing happening. People continuing to die from violence and starvation and disease, and not a sign of life. You have a White House that has claimed it's got things like the minimum wage under control, and yet Congress members and senators in both houses nonetheless moving forward with introducing legislation to raise the minimum wage, because Congress has a responsibility to do its job. But on Yemen, nothing but a few little mumbled comments about the president will take care of it. Reprehensible and murderous, and we have a real opportunity to make this happen, and to make it happen through Congress. I mean, of course, overwhelmingly, I don't care who does it. If a war ends and lives are saved. But if Congress does it, or if Congress, having done it last year, is understood to have done it, it creates a new power to proceed with demanding that Congress end another war and another war and another war. And this is a war that the United States military takes part in directly, but also provides a lot of the weapons for the other participants. And so we have to make permanently ending weapon sales to countries like Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates part of this, and then proceed to permanently ending weapons sales to numerous other countries, if not all of them. So there's an online action link at the bottom here, but this is a topic to work on urgently in many ways. Next slide. Iran is as well. I think there's been pretty little discussion in the United States about the fact that come June, if the United States has not changed its behavior toward Iran and made peace, the Iranian people will almost certainly elect a new government that will have no interest in peace whatsoever. So there is an opportunity in the coming months that will vanish. And the indications are very mixed, and a couple good, nominations and some horrendous ones from Joe Biden. But overall, the indication is a complete lack of understanding of what's needed and an intention to continue down a path that will not succeed with Iran. So we need to be very active on this. I mean, we're being told that China and Russia are the big real enemies, because it's so much more credible and it sells so many more weapons. But there is a real danger of war on Iran, which many people in Washington, D.C. sadly have wanted for years, and which the peace movement in the United States and in Great Britain and around the world have played a major role in preventing a number of times in the past years. So we can't fail on this now. Next slide.
David, I think we'll go 5 more minutes and then open it up for questions.
Okay, maybe we'll get to that. Let's see. Ending the sanctions on numerous places is badly needed, but a place to start is the sanctions on the top officials at the International Criminal Court. You don't get more lawless than that. Can we not get that out of the new regime in Washington? Next slide. Another critical issue to push on, where there has been an initial step on the START treaty renewal, but so many other steps needed. And again, this is a crisis that matches any other threat facing us as a planet. Next slide. This is going to come up this year in Congress. It is going to be considered unconstitutional to impose draft registration only on men, and a right and a step in feminist progress to sign up young women along with young men, to force them to kill and die against their will as a matter of their rights, equal right to be forced to kill and die against your will. So we have to push back against the notion that it is feminist to force women into wars, and to recognize the obvious solution, how you can treat people equally. Don't sign up men to force them into wars either, and you've thereby treated men and women with equal and increased respect. Next slide. Our friends at Veterans for Peace have this boat called the Golden Rule that's been part of peace activities around the world for many years, and it's going to be coming up the Mississippi River and making stops along the way, and it should be greeted and celebrated in the coming year. Next slide. When you're gonna sell a house and the paint's peeling on the front door and you can spend $10 and get 20,000 more out of your house, it doesn't compare to what you can get out of almost any improvement to a website, to social media platforms, to what you look like online is who you are in the eyes of many, and so get World Beyond War or whoever to make the best possible websites, videos, webinars. Use a system like Action Network is the one World Beyond War uses, but whatever one you want, to send emails, host petitions, letter campaigns, forums, fundraising pages, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. And I think this is the last slide, so maybe we made it. Use this declaration of peace on the World Beyond War website to build our global movement toward the abolition of war and to increase the number of people we can tell on our email list about your activities in Arkansas. I believe that was the last slide, Donald.
Yes, thank you. One of the questions that came up is if you would just say a little more about how we sort out the propaganda around Russia and China that seems to be constantly on the news.
Well, there's this incredible tendency in a lot of people, and of course in media outlets, to oversimplify and to take sides. And so the minute that you say something positive about Russia, you're declared to be glorifying Russia as a perfect model government, and vice versa. And but I was incredibly jealous of the coverage that U.S. media outlets were giving Russian protests this past week, because of the horrible coverage they always give to U.S. protests. But then I went and looked at Russia TV, and it was a model of horrible, distorted, gross, try to pretend it's not there coverage, just exactly like U.S. media coverage of U.S. protests. I think the damage done by the Russiagate madness, I can't tell you how long it's going to last or how significant it's going to be. But the fact that Biden called up Putin this past week and accused him of the bounties on troops' heads nonsense, despite it having been debunked by the U.S. government, is an indication of where things may continue to go. I think we have to overcome this demonization of foreign governments that the U.S. military and the weapons industries want demonized. Of course, they're horrible governments. Everybody's got horrible governments, but sanctioning human populations illegally, immorally, punishing people who live under a horrible government, threatening nuclear war, is absolutely inexcusable. And so it's worth recognizing that yes, there are horrors in Russia, but I would love to have police you can pelt with snowballs and they walk away. I've been on the streets in Moscow and seen a cop pull a guy over and him jump out and run back and yell at the cop. And me and my friends thinking that guy would be dead now. He would be, so it's important to teach other countries our lessons, but also to learn from them once in a while. And the fact that NATO has continued to expand and that Trump has badgered every NATO member to buy more weapons and strengthened it and pushed its propaganda forward, while simultaneously convincing every good liberal that NATO is a force for good because it's anti-Trump. This puts us in a difficult position trying to advocate for peace. Russia spends 8.76% and shrinking of what the United States spends on its military is not a threat to take away your freedoms. But a nuclear war, whoever starts it intentionally or accidentally, ends life on this planet. And that has to be taken seriously. And if doing whatever we can to piss off Putin, because we hate him, is a higher priority than avoiding nuclear apocalypse, something is wrong. And if Navalny, who has, the support of 10% of Russians and 100% of Western media, gets the Nobel Peace Prize, and they play the video of him advocating murdering foreigners like cockroaches, I mean, they should at least have Obama present it. That's all I have to say.
Okay. There's a question here about military spending. Is the problem the amount, or is the problem what the military budget is used for?
Wow, an easy one. The amount. I mean, You got about $2 trillion a year going into militaries, and about half of it, in fact, over $1 trillion a year going into the US military through the Pentagon, through the Energy Department, through the Homeland Security, as they misname it, department, through the State Department and all the secret agencies. It's such an unfathomable amount of money. You could, Joe Amtrak Biden could take 1% of just the Pentagon's bit of money and double the budget for Amtrak. He could take 2% and triple it. This is the amount of money we're talking about. It kills far more people than all the wars put together. You can take 3% of US military spending and end starvation on Earth. Millions of people are starving to death. This is the problem. And Eisenhower warned, and the facts have played out decade after decade. The more you spend, the more wars you get. David Vine, professor at American University in DC, has a book out this past year documenting the influence of bases. But where you build foreign US military bases, you increase the likelihood of wars. You don't decrease it. And so you have all this counterproductive spending, generating enemies, generating wars, destroying the environment, justifying secrecy, eroding self-governance, eroding democracy, fueling racist violence, as we discussed, et cetera, et cetera. And the worst thing it's doing, on top of all of that, is taking the money away from where it's needed. And so it takes an incredible investment in propaganda to get advocates, passionate, courageous, wise, and strategic advocates for anti-poverty efforts, pro-education efforts, all the good things that need money, environmental protection, to get them to avoid mentioning where all the money is, that it's in the military. And part of that is that $1 billion a year goes into marketing and goes into quietly paying sports teams to celebrate the military before every game, and putting branches of the military on race cars, and funding and consulting on Hollywood movies and video games, and saturating our society with it.
Well, David, we thank you very much for your words of wisdom. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate everything you're doing, Donald. Thank you.
David, I appreciate your diligence and your patience and your advice with helping us work through our issues at the beginning of the call. You made it a little bit easier for me to get through, so thank you for that, and I apologize for it.
I think you worked it all out.
Yeah, many of us were blessed to hear Medea Benjamin last weekend for the Arkansas WAN annual meeting, and I think your words had a lot to, build off some of the things that she had said. And
I can't recall ever having disagreed with her on anything, which is, I think, of very few people I could say that about.
You did a great job. Were there any more questions, Donald? Let's see.
There were a couple of comments, but I had a little trouble really sorting out questions. So there was one question right at the end. Will there be any justice for Khashoggi?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I know that Saudi Arabia arguably has the worst human rights record on the planet, taking human rights to be an issue that applies to only injustices outside of wars, and has probably the worst record on the planet, if you do include wars in the mix and count bombing people as a violation of their human rights. And I know that Saudi Arabia funds think tanks in Washington, D.C., funds U.S. universities, funds, it saturates the U.S. political world with its money and its influence. It gives to, so-called foundations like the Clinton Foundation, and influences the people involved. And we have this incredibly bizarre situation in US politics where people talk about dictatorships as if they were something exceptional and opposed by the US government, when oppressive governments and dictatorships across the globe, people with actual outrageous palaces like the one that Putin supposedly has, are almost entirely funded and trained and armed by the US government and the US military. And so if we can't stop the US government from arming and training and funding the Saudi military and the United Arab Emirates military and the Bahraini military and the Israeli military and on and on and on, how are we supposed to, I mean, how do you demand justice of a brutal royal dictatorship that you're arming and funding and training and partnering in wars with? So, you have Ilhan Omar's legislation, Stop Arming Human Rights Abusers. That would be a start. Stop giving weapons of war to those who abuse human rights beyond the, whatever the normal level is considered to be. That would be a start. As far as, what will constitute justice, I don't want to advocate a coup in another country, but I want to advocate, a democracy movement in Saudi Arabia. And that's not going to happen with the US government, taking the relationship that it currently has.
And then we had a comment that probably wasn't a question, but I think is worthwhile kind of repeating, and I'll summarize it. Most states require a 4-year college degree to become employees of the Forest Service, but only a GED or high school diploma to become a part of the police department. And wouldn't it be good if we switch that around and change the hiring program so that the Forestry Service could be peacekeepers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't want to improve the police so much as defund them and outgrow them and get beyond them. But there's a book I'm reading called To Poison a Nation that's going to come out later this year about the origins of modern racist policing in the United States. But I think we have our priorities out of whack in a lot of regards. I mean, why is the drinking age higher than the killing age? Why can someone go join the U.S. military and kick in doors and bomb houses, but they can't have a drink? I mean, I think we have we have a lot of changes to make.
Okay, it's all yours, Bob.
Thank you very much. And I particularly like your presentation, some of the ideas that you had for organizations like us to improve how we do things. I think we'll look at those and pass those on to our new board and officers for consideration. I know that our website looks like 1994, but anyway, we can do better and we can have some better stuff out there. But thank you for everything. I'm going to play this video that I started before, and then I'm going to play another video of that Hamid suggested of what is her name? I think it's Rihanna Givens playing Woody Guthrie's "All You Fascists Are Bound to Lose." And if you want to stay past that, if other people on the call want to stay back that and talk amongst ourselves, we can do that for as long as you like. But I do want to finish this video that I was successful with before, and I have a high level of confidence that I'll get it right this time. Thank you, though. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us. Well, appreciate it.
If you work in a team, you've got to try Monday.com. Go to Monday.com and manage all your team's work on a powerful platform.
Who do we have left? Anybody have anything to say? Unmute yourselves. Let's see if let me. Now you're able to unmute yourselves if you want to talk. I apologize. I'd shut it down based on the trouble we had before.
Hey, Donald, I have a question for you because you know that gentleman much better than I do. And I was really impressed. And I thank you for having him speak to it. It's probably one of the best presentations I've seen on any of our meetings. One thing I had a question on, what are your thoughts on, I did everything I could to avoid the draft when I was in college. But one thing I have a question on, do you think that if we adopted a system of mandatory universal conscription of men and women in the United States up to the age of 35, like Norway does, and they require 16 months of service, 12 months in the military, actual military, and 6 months in home guard, like Norway does. Do you think that might make our politicians less likely to vote for war if their children and grandchildren were subject to the dangers of war?
Well, I don't think it would make any difference to our leaders. I am just that cynical about it. And if we enacted something like that, I would do everything in my power to help conscientious objectors be able to do that responsibly.
I'm not saying, I'm not playing the devil's advocate. It's just a question. Do you think it might make politicians less likely to subject their children and grandchildren to war?
I don't think that politicians' grandchildren have ever gone to war very
Yeah,
often. I think they'd find a way out of it.
You can always get a diagnosis for bone spurs if you want to get out of serving in the war. So I think the rich have always gotten away. I mean, look at the poor people served in the Civil War. It wasn't the rich landowners that went to war. It was the poor Southern people that fought. It's always been that way. I think we ought to have free college education or trade school for every high school graduate and get kids involved in something that's productive. We need to cut way back on our spending for military. It's a bad choice for kids who have no money. Their only choice is to go into the military, and that shouldn't be the only choice. I think we need to change a few things along that line.
Having a draft didn't stop the war in Vietnam.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think Donald's point about if you did such a thing, having safeguards in it for conscientious objectors would really be key. That's got to be an important part of it too.
Well, I wish I had, when I was in college, I wish I had the guts like you did, John, to be a conscientious objector. But still, that would have interrupted my college life, or even shortly thereafter, like yours did. But you were willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah, well, it was also true that back in the 50s, I knew a bunch of guys who had started college and then they took a year off to go military. I mean, it was a different era, kind of. It was like, I'm going to spend a year or two in the military and then I'll come back to college. That was fairly frequent back then. But that changed after Vietnam, of course.
Well, if there'd be anything mandatory, it should be just public service, right? Right, helping with others' problems. But I don't know. The other thing is that you get free college, but maybe you'd also have to do some work in nursing homes or something else in the summer or something like that. That would save the government money or pay off, or I don't know. But anyway.
I mean, that's an idea. And there are some programs where, I don't know the details, some medical college expense will be deferred for serving in rural hospitals, and teachers, the same thing. I mean, I really get tired of people, our media perceiving those in the military are the only ones that are serving our country, because there's so many others are,
I earned my PhD under a training grant, and I needed to work for a health-related field for 7 years to pay that back.
That's great.
Other things can be, patriotism is not about military. We need to stop associating military service with patriotism. There's other ways to be patriotic.
I guess I could jump in as a AmeriCorps member. I mean, past, but served two years, and I always say this: once AmeriCorps, always AmeriCorps. So as far as serving our country, we're in service in our hometowns and in our state, and that to me is service to our country. being able to work with organizations to help alleviate whatever issues that are going on there. And so, like you said, Bob, there are many organizations that give and serve other than the military.
Hey, Bob, going back to the program overall, because I know the hour is getting on here. I thought, given the way we started, way we commenced, I mean, you just hung in there and coolly made it work. Got the troublemakers. Oh, I wouldn't say they were all troublemakers, but they were whoever they were.
I kicked David Swanson off and prevented him from rejoining. How about that?
He was able to rejoin. But those other people, you subdued them, and we were able to go on to the program. And I think the program, I mean, we had great awardees, and both Kwami and Clarice spoke movingly afterwards about their receipt of the awards and what their projects are like and their richness to all of us. And then Indivisible did the same thing. They had a lot of supporters. So I thought that really worked out well. It was really exceedingly informational and inspirational. I thought I was inspired by these people. And then of course we had David, the guy that we were all interested in hearing because we've heard so much about World Beyond War. And I think this was a chance for Donald especially to do it upright, to have David come and for us all to, lift up the sheet about what's under World Beyond War. And we got a real feeling for that now, and how incredibly complicated the opportunities are.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to all those.
Yeah. It was an interesting bookend to Medea last week. Same foundation, but a different approach in some ways, I thought, both were really good, I thought.
Well, I'm going to go through this slide presentation every day for the next year.
We should. No,
can you share that?
Yeah.
Please.
Every morning I'm going to come and I'm going to go through that and say, what did I not do yesterday?
But that's serious. There's some good ideas there that we should, the new board and the new officers should get together and kind of consider.
Donald, can you share the PowerPoint with us? Are you able to get that from him?
Oh yeah, so
that's really powerful stuff he had.
Right, so let me
well, I tell you what, Bob, this was the most interesting Zoom meeting I've ever attended. And you did a great job of organizing it and keeping it clicking, and you really did a great job.
Well, I mean, we were able to work through our issues. The only other Zoom meeting, we're in good company. The only other Zoom meeting I've been to that's been hijacked was a tribute to Woody Guthrie put on by Will Greer's theatrical botanical in Topanga Canyon, California. Now, Will Greer was Grandpa Walton on the Waltons.
Yeah.
And he was a friend of Woody's. He was blacklisted for being a communist for 20 or 30 years until the Waltons gig came up. But he's continued on. Well, he's dead now, but his family has continued on this legacy. And Jan and I went to a couple of productions there, which because it's near where my parents live. But
Jane, do you see that?
What's that?
I was just going to ask Jane if she could see.
Oh, yes, I see it. Bob, will you capture that when you capture the chat? He put in the PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll grab them all. Yeah.
Okay, good. I know you do that at the end.
I appreciate everybody sticking through the issues we had. I'm glad they were resolved. It was embarrassing to me, but I particularly appreciate David Swanson working with us on making a solution for this. So, yeah.
Yeah, imagine he's in so many Zooms that he knows all about it.
Yeah, when I talked to him on the phone,
Yeah.
he indicated it might have not been a good idea to publicize the link as broadly as I did, but he was right. But you learn.
Exactly. I wanted to mention that. Yeah, not in on the Facebook, you shouldn't. Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, we've done some without any issues, and I thought it might be broader, but we'll move on and learn.
Yeah, all the program components ended up really carrying the day, and as I said before, it turned out just as informational and inspirational as one could have had it. I think, especially given the hour of the day, and by the time David got on to talk, he'd already been sort of introduced by these terrific other speakers that we had heard from already by then. It was like, what? David's going to come on now? And he just held that high level. He held those high levels that our Kansans had already sort of brought to the table.
Well, and I was glad for him to get a little flavor for what we're doing here.
Yes, yeah, that too, absolutely.
We had a lot of partners that did some good work that we could publicize and take credit for, so I think that's great. How about our new board members? Do you have any thoughts about what you saw?
That was interesting. A lot of the stuff that was discussed in the presentation, I've actually, we've discussed that in some of our classes before, the stuff about Yemen was something that I had to learn last year for Model United Nations. What was the other thing? There was something else that I was thinking, but it left me.
Was it China or Russia, Maya?
I think it was China or Russia, and how they were portrayed.
And I think Yemen was an issue that we wanted to focus on at school as part of our Amnesty Club. So it was good to hear someone talk about that.
Definitely.
Maya, do you think you can open
really...
a chapter of this organization in your school? Maybe?
Do you mean a chapter for ACPJ or a chapter?
ACPJ or war, beyond war group, as he was mentioning. I mean, both, ACPJ more than likely, but yeah.
We have so what we're doing this year for Amnesty Club, we haven't been able to get it up to speed yet, but we are focusing on different issues that are happening. We have 6 different issues, but we're doing a focus on we're basically going to be doing activities related to each, and students can choose. We'll be discussing these issues at a human rights symposium that we're going to host sometime in April, but that's what we've been trying to get on foot. So.
What are the current plans for your symposium that you just mentioned that for April? That was what you mentioned?
We're thinking April 10th right now.
Okay. And I think that you had talked to Kwami about, I think Maya talked to Kwami about being part of that and some others. So yeah, we want to support that.
We'd be really happy to see you guys there.
Yeah. How about our folks from the Omni Center? What do you guys have to say? What's going on up in Northwest?
I guess I may be the only one.
Yeah, I think Tiffany dropped off.
And there have been some things going on. We had a protest this last week about U of A participation in the construction of non-nuclear parts of the construction of nuclear weapons on campus. Been some online Zoom discussions. Things have been relatively quiet this year with COVID. But yeah, got a newsletter that goes out every week. Has a lot of things and links to other things that are related.
Glad you could make it, Richard.
Yeah, Gladys was the follow-up meeting for the nuclear protest was the same time as this, and the Gladys was there.
Yeah, there was a bunch of stuff happening down here too.
Yeah.
You all have a radio station too, right?
Yeah, we do.
How is that going?
Yeah, it's going really well. Getting a pretty good amount of local programming. It's online at kpsq.org. And I've last fall took a advanced radio class from Rick Stockdale, who was the station manager for the local PBS station here for 40 years, and he just retired from that and is teaching, and I did a series on things to do to improve policing, and mostly was discussions between local activists and local people in the city council and such things. Kind of what can we come to an agreement on to improve policing? Kind of grew out of the Black Lives Matter protests this last summer.
Yeah, right on.
I just wanted to say I was glad that David touched on what's going on in Iran. I mean, we kind of know, but I like how he really emphasized the election they're going to have in June of 2021, because that doesn't give us a lot of time to try to, push for some reform with how we're dealing with them. So, and we need to be aware of that. And I don't know that everybody out there is really fully aware of that. So I thought it was good of him to emphasize that. It looks like there's a petition that we can sign too. So maybe when we go to that website that we have on the chat room, we might be able to go there and sign a petition as well. Jean, I think Jean is trying to talk, but she's muted.
Unmuted.
There you are.
Yeah, we hear you now.
We can hear you now.
Okay. I just want to watch David. He's been one of my heroes for years, and I want to watch him. Watch what he said. He had some wonderful ideas. I really appreciate your having him to on the program. He was terrific.
Absolutely.
Bob, is there any way you can post the links to the slideshow? Also send it to the board members?
So I can send it to you on an email. I did put it in the chat.
It's hard to get it from the chat for me.
Okay. No, I can send it to you.
That would be great. Thank you.
I'll start and just post the whole contents of that chat to the board members, and then we can go through and edit it and put stuff on the Facebook page, I think. So
Yeah, that'd be super. Yeah. That'd be super, Bob. Thank you. And Hamid also, yeah.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
I have a question. I think it was our last monthly meeting that Ellen gave us all a letter to send to our state representatives about stand your ground. It was like too little, too late. Is there any way that we can get more on a ground floor of knowing what the legislature is trying to pass, so that we can, as an organization, say this is wrong, this is bad? Because stand your ground was the worst bill that's been passed, I think, so far this year.
Well, it hasn't been passed. There was a protest about it today down at the Capitol. It's proposed out there. But if you want to get plugged in, I would get plugged in to Indivisible, and I'd get plugged into Citizens First Congress. And other people may have some other ideas about what's out there. but they kind of had their finger on some of these new bills, I would say, and I would encourage the new officers to talk about how we support this.
Well, it passed so easily as representatives, it's got to go to the Senate now.
It just got out of committee. This isn't a done deal now. They haven't been any formal vote on it, but it's out there, right? And I don't have a whole lot of hopes for it. I mean, kicking it down, but what Indivisible is doing, and I think Citizens First Congress have a similar approach. Those are things we need to support. I would suggest. Other thoughts?
And also Moms Demand Action. They're also big on struggling with it.
Well, we could, if it does pass the Senate, if it does pass, we could, as an organization, write a letter to the governor. He could veto it.
In many ways, I'm going to miss my governor when he's gone, because he has squashed some of this crazy stuff. And the next generation, I don't think will.
We will miss him. You're right.
Yeah, we may well. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys hanging in there today.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Good night. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.